What's going on, Echelon Nation? Welcome back to the Echelon broadcast. Today, what we're going to talk about is that if you're not perfect, you suck, and you should probably try again. Come back after the intro. Welcome back. This is Mark with Echelon Media, and welcome to the Echelon broadcast. So, interesting intro, right? What do I mean by what you're doing is not perfect, you suck, and you should probably try again? This has been something that I try to abide by ever since I heard it more clearly defined, actually, by Tim Ferriss. If you don't know, I'm a big Tim Ferriss head. I've followed the guy for a long, long time. Have I necessarily applied his principles? Probably not. And that's because probably of just a tizzy of all sorts of different circumstances in my life that have either come in the way of or just outright prevented me from living that sort of wanderer, digital nomad lifestyle. And that is something I'm striving to create with Echelon Media. So, something that Tim mentioned about this idea of perfect practice is this principle that when you do something, it's not that practice makes perfect. It's that perfect practice makes perfect. Sorry, I'm still sniffling. It's certainly a topic that I've touched on over and over in different places, but it's something I want to drill down into because it applies to so many things. And yet there are so many sort of frustrations and hesitations and anxieties around this idea because we somehow associate perfection with some negative idea that perfection somehow means removing the humanity from something. That the more you strive for perfection, the more you're sort of peaking at this superficiality, and you're becoming less of a human being simply because you're becoming really good at something. But the truth of the matter is, even at the heights of a performance, like take someone like what's that kid's name? Sean, the snowboarder. Even at the level that he's at, he's not necessarily. If you were to ask him, he will tell you that he's not perfect. There may be things that you don't notice, but he has just ingrained the habits of the basics and his own particular style and how to navigate the course when it comes to snowboarding. He comes off so good that we don't see the imperfections and the things that we think, wow, like this guy's a god. But I mean, I can certainly say that I do get this feedback every now and then, and I got to be careful because I don't want it to inflate my ego. But I do get the feedback that what you're creating is really good. It's really cool, but it's not necessarily, it's nowhere near the level that I want it to be at. The colors could be better. The lighting could certainly be better. The studio space could definitely be better. There are so many things I would want to improve as far as the Echelon broadcast goes, or even the entirety of Echelon Media and the entirety of who I am as a human being, that it's a constant strive to become better. And the reason why I want to use this concept of perfection, although it's not really, it's just the highest heights of achievement in the particular space that you happen to be in. So again, it's not perfection. There's no ultimate top of the mountain place for all videographers to ever strive for, because even at the higher levels, you could check out Chase Jarvis, you can go and check out Peter McKinnon, you can follow those guys, and even follow someone like Casey Neistat, and they're always striving to better their craft. And it's better to see it as a craft, because when you see what you do, whether it's videography or you're a snowboarder or you're Tony Hawk and you've been working on just skateboarding forever, you're constantly refining your craft. But in order to do so, I want to incorporate and bring in another idea from the War of Art, and it's about cutting away the distractions. And this is why I feel it can seem like striving for higher levels of achievement and perfection can come off as being almost inhuman and robotic, is because the spontaneity of life somewhat gets stripped away when all of your focus, like I mentioned before, if you're a Usain Bolt, when the entirety of your being is just on being the best runner ever at that one particular activity. And so you're so consumed by it. Everything that you do, from your relationships to the way that you eat, the way that you sleep, the way that you live your life, is so consumed by that one particular thing that it seems like you're just a machine. But the fact of the matter is, if that is ultimately how you define your life, then it's perfectly fine. Because, I mean, I guess I could kind of argue that if you were like redneck trailer trash, and you happen to be the best redneck trailer trash person in your whole trailer park, it still requires a bit, like I would say, practice. But you've fallen into the practice of just being a redneck trailer park person, and so that is who you are. That's how you ultimately, if you die there, define your life. Where in Usain Bolt's case, if he was to define his life as the fastest human on earth, the fastest runner on earth, that is how he defines his life, simply because he put in hours and hours of perfect practice to hone and refine his craft. And that's what I feel we all need to do. And that's why I think I mentioned this before about producing prolifically. You don't want to just produce prolifically, because in the process, if you just blindly produce whatever comes along with no target to aim at, then you have no feedback to tell you that you're on the right track. And that's why it's important to, even though it sucks, pay attention to criticism, because as I mentioned probably 2 episodes ago, I got a lot of criticism on a recent video featuring David Bond. But that's just part of the thing. I mean, if you were to take every loss Usain Bolt had, or every loss that Sean had, or every time that he felt, there was a really gnarly video of Sean going up a half pipe and then coming down, and I guess the board must have hit him in the face and it cut his face wide open. It was like freaking gnarly. If you ever get a chance to look that up on YouTube, it's nuts, man. And that's the kind of stuff, if you see the look on his face when he goes to the hospital, he questions his very existence, why it is that he's doing what he's doing, but somehow he gathers himself and gets back on track to pursue what he's doing, to do what he's loved most. And it's in that doing, it's in that prolific production, as well as an eye to perfecting what you're doing, even in those tight moments, those really, like, where the tolerances of something like that have to be so perfect that it can seem superhuman or godlike. He still pays attention to those things. He's still trying to make it better. And we don't think that. But the thing is, if you're trying to build a certain kind of life, it's best that you practice perfectly. Now, how do you even know what perfect practice looks like? Well, you need to follow a template. And this is one of the hardest things for me. This has been one of the hardest things for me, because maybe it's just the way my brain is structured. Maybe it's just the way I was raised and being in such a structured place. But I really have a difficult time following a template. But I've had to humble myself again and again and remind myself that I have this goal of generating $10 million over the course of, the next 5 to 10 years. So I've never generated $10 million. So how will I ever know what it looks like, what it feels like to do that? And we all need to realize this in ourselves with whatever particular goal you happen to be. If you wanted to be the best sewer ever, you need to look up someone like, what is it? I think it's Mimi G. Mimi G Styles, I believe, is the brand if you look her up on YouTube. And she went through this whole process on her own. I don't think with any formal teaching. Like, she just was passionate about it, dug up all the information that she could to refine and hone her skills and her craft. And now she has a platform speaking to an audience about this hobby, this craft that most people would think requires a lot of intensive schooling. And this is also part of the reason why I'm not a fan of schooling in general. because, excuse me. Oh yeah, so classy. So I'm not a fan of a formal education because that information is good for establishing the fundamentals, but beyond that, the market is constantly evolving. The demand for that particular skill is constantly evolving. For example, I'm a licensed vocational nurse or a licensed practical nurse, if you look at it from the Florida perspective. And that position is getting phased out because they feel that RNs can take care of the more complicated things, and then CNAs can take care of the more simple things like cleaning out sheets and dressing wounds and very basic functions like that. So though I went to school and spent a good amount of money, and now I'm not saying that if you're going into the medical field, you can just figure this shit out on your own. That's not what I'm saying. There are certain things that require accreditation and certain permits and licenses to ensure that you can practice them properly. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying for the looser, more liberal pursuits like videography, photography, even entrepreneurialism, although you want to steer clear of applying this too much if you're trying to do something like Theranos. Don't do that because that's also in medicine. But outside of that, liberal things, trying to build your life. There's so many different templates for that kind of perfection to create the kind of life that you want. And for me, the kind of life that I want is something similar to what Tim Ferriss did, something similar to what David Bond did, something similar to what Sam Colder did, and it's establishing and building a life on my own terms. I haven't done that. I've scratched at pieces of what that looks like, but that usually comes at the tutelage of someone who is willing to share either the information or willing to share even the space for me to practice that technique, that craft of running a business and managing my own life. And it's like, even this, for example, making myself sit here at 6 a.m., 6 in the morning, to do this is part of that prolific practice and perfection, because I need to understand that it's only in the doing that I internalize and ultimately integrate all of this into me and get better at podcasting so that I can so I don't have to think about the fundamentals and I can just focus on delivering the solid content that people would demand. But if I'm constantly going back and ambling through the basics, like for example, if Picasso never learned the fundamentals of painting and how to utilize a brush, he's always going to go back to just sort of figuring out how to do it. And every now and then he'll have a gem. That I feel is like kind of like beginner's luck. I'll go and play pool sometimes and I get some decent beginner's luck. I just don't have enough practice to really know what it is that I'm doing. Possibly the pieces are there to create something amazing. But unless I practice and refine to hone it and really tease out that ability, it's just going to be hammering and hitting my head against the wall, doing the same things over and over again, because I have no consistent piece of perfect practice to get me to higher and higher levels. And if you don't want to do this, you don't have to do this. But I think with anything, I've come to realize with everyone, unless you really, really just really don't care, I feel like everyone wants to get to that level. This is why, like, for example, if someone gets into CrossFit, they want to buy all the gear. They want the shoes, the shorts, the clothes. They want to dress up as their favorite CrossFitter, for example. Or in my case, I want to be a kind of guitarist, and so I knew that Tom Morello schlepped his guitars together, and so I was trying to schlep my guitars together without any basic understanding of how guitars work. And so I think everyone wants to hit that higher level, but oftentimes a large majority of people aren't willing to actually put in the time. They want to look the part, but they don't want to do it, because trying to become Rich Froning in the CrossFit world, for example, takes a lot of practice and effort. And that means you have to narrow your focus and practice and do things the same way, or really very close to the way that Rich does his stuff. If I wanted to be like Tom Morello, I would need to do things very similarly to Tom Morello. Or if I wanted to be Stevie Ray Vaughan or a John Mayer, for example, I have to do things very similarly to them. And that's the closest measure of perfection to being a John Mayer, to being a Stevie Ray Vaughan, to being a Michael Phelps, to being a Usain Bolt, to being, God, I'm blanking on names, to being like maybe like Michelle Kwan. I'm really, really going back there, throwing it back, way old school. But you require the practice, and you require it to be closest to that level of perfection in order to really get there. And why does this matter for business? Why does it matter for craft and videography or photography? Because just picking up the camera alone is not going to make you a good photographer. It's about constant practice. And it's not just about the constant practice, because you can practice and suck. Because there are a lot of people who have been, and I certainly feel like I've been doing this for a long time, and because I haven't had a focus. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is it's having a focus. If you don't have a focus, you're just going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. You're going to do the same things over and over again. And unless you pay attention to the kind of perfection, I want to be like a Peter McKinnon or a Matty Hapoya or a Casey Neistat or the Northrops or, God, I mean, who else is there? Like a Philip Bloom. How do I get to that level? How do I get to the level that my work is recognized internationally? It's a matter of putting in the perfect practice and just having the focus of saying, I'm going to present my work in this sort of way, and I'm just going to keep honing away at that particular thing, just chipping away at it, and I'm going to do it for an extended period of time until I either feel I'm there or I get the feedback of the people around me to say that you're right there, buddy. Anyways, as always, I hope this makes sense. I hope this was coherent and is relevant to what it is that you're doing as an entrepreneur or as an artist, as a photographer, a videographer, because I want this to be something that you can execute on. That you can take a look at your life and say, wow, I'm not practicing my craft nearly as perfectly as I could, with enough focus and drive as I could. I should fix that. So with that being said, if you happen to be listening to this on iTunes, go ahead and leave me a comment if you have any questions or suggestions, if you have anything that you need me to clear up. Also, give me a 5-star rating if you like this, flat out. That would be freaking awesome. And if you happen to be listening or watching this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And if you didn't like it, go ahead and give me a comment at the bottom rather than just the thumbs down, because that doesn't tell me anything. Leave a comment and tell me, hey, like, you were kind of rambly. I didn't understand this part. At about 2 minutes in, you said something and I need some clarification on that. Go ahead and leave a comment and tell me that stuff there. And if you like this, good. Again, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and go ahead and subscribe if you want to keep watching more of this. Or if you didn't like it and you wanted to see if I was going to actually answer your question, go ahead and subscribe as well. Feel free to unsubscribe if I didn't address your question at a later point. And as well as, subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that you're made aware of any time I happen to be posting new content. And share this. Like and share and comment as well if you happen to be watching this on Facebook, because I'll put it up there as well. As always, my name is Mark with Echelon Media, helping you elevate your story. Peace out. Take it easy. I'll see you later.